Hey everyone, Richard here from Design and Built. In this episode, we get the car back from wiring, go for the first drive, and then go into the detail on how it's wired. Before we get into any of that though, I just want to let you know that the car is going to be on display at MotorEx at the Melbourne Showgrounds from April 30 to May 1st. So don't forget to get your tickets and come down and say hi to me and have a chin wag. I am extremely humbled that my car is going to be there. MotorEx is full of top-notch cars, show cars and classic cars. There's some really cool stuff going on display. So if you're down there, don't be shy, come and say hi to me down at the Raceworks stand. So the car has been away for a month now. In that time, I've deep cleaned my workshop and the garage. I'm generally pretty good when it comes to keeping it clean, but towards the end it all got a little bit messy, so it's good to have it all back in order. I organised all my leftover parts and put them in storage tubs. I've actually raised the garage door by 90mm, and I've done this by moving the tracks up. To raise the tracks up, I masonry drilled into hollow brick and dyno bolted the tracks 90mm higher. I changed the cam system on the garage door so it now opens to the corresponding height of the tracks. And I actually took a break from it all. I've been going pretty hard for the last 15 months, so it's pretty good to get some R&R in. Got my brother here and we're out on the street, so we've just unloaded the car from the trailer, we've put in a drive shaft and we've put in some transmission fluid, and then we're going to fill it up with coolant and or at least water, and then the aim is to actually drive it into the garage tonight, so there's no way to get up the incline otherwise, and we have to deflate the tyres, so there's no reason why we can't drive it. It is fully wired and operational, which I'm going to go into detail later in the video. So let's go ahead and fill it with some water and we'll go from there. So unfortunately, I didn't have the microphone on in this shot, but this is the first drive of my Landcruiser ever, and I was smiling ear to ear. The Landcruiser still didn't have any brakes at this point, and my brother was in the shadows, as you can see behind it, walking around with a piece of 2x4 just in case it started rolling backwards. Just managed to scrape into the garage. I'm pretty sure the rubber seal on the bottom of the garage door was just skimming on top of the roof, but I think I can get another 20mm out of my garage by just getting a grinder on these and reprofiling them. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and it saved me a significant amount of money rather than replacing the whole door, which is fantastic. So let's do a full walk around and focus on the electrics of the car. There is so much wiring on this car, and I'm just so happy with the work that's been done on it. I didn't do any of the work myself, but I did mount pretty much all the components, and I had a rough idea of sort of where it was going to run. Scott from SG Electrics in Lilydale did all the work, and I'm just so happy with it. I guess he really only does show cars and hot rods, but he was kind enough to take mine in, and he did an absolutely fantastic job. Have a look at the engine bay. There's just no wires. I mean, how often in a four-wheel drive do you see only 2 wires running from the battery? Normally you have a whole heap of stuff with the terminals. You have relays everywhere, fuse boxes everywhere. So the engine bay is so clean, and I'm so happy with it. So just focus on it. He's mounted a horn for me down there, so I've got a horn. So the winch solenoid's wired. I've still got to do the main power cable to the battery, which I'll get to. I'm just gonna add more cables to the battery. Scott also plumbed all my aircon lines. I had a rough idea of where they were gonna go, and I did mount some stuff. I mounted the air dryer off the shock tower, and it's all plumbed up now, and then it goes through the firewall. This is where the heater would normally go in an FJ, and I ran all the bulkhead fittings through there, and then Scott's put this grommet and ran some engine wires through there as well. which is extremely clean. You can see here, so the Barra wiring loom actually goes through the firewall, and Scott ordered this grommet and it works perfectly. I'm so stoked on it. One of the pros of this is it allows me to mount the computer inside the cabin, which is nice and high up, actually above this grommet level. So there's no danger of really damaging it or getting it wet. So these are some light bar brackets that I designed, and I just did this in 3D on the computer. And you can see here that the plug for the light bar is up tucked in there. It's just so neat in comparison to a lot of wiring jobs I've seen before. So you can see here all the AC lines run through that blanking plate for the heater, and then they go straight to the AC. So I did plan some of this out, although I didn't have it plumbed when I sent it off to Scott. So I had a rough idea that we were going to go from there to there. And I had to get a few special fittings, and then Scott ordered the rest. So I think it's pretty clean. I mean, obviously looking up, it doesn't look clean, but when you're looking from, eye level, then it looks pretty good. And I did say I was thinking about some sort of kick panels, and I guess let's just monitor it and see how it goes. We roll into the AC, so that's all plumbed up and working. And I guess let me show you, in fact. So I hope you can hear that. I guess I need to run the ducts still, but that is on the to-do list. So we've got that, and it changes the outputs. So, which is beautiful. So that's just another job done. So yeah, I've run the ducts, but that's okay. We'll get that done. And then literally all of these switches here are now functional. So I guess, some of the stuff that I can use now, I still haven't done all the air system, but the horn. And then we've also got compressor, so that works. So we've got a little cabin light in here. So I'm sure I could come up with a brighter solution, and possibly I was thinking about running strip lighting around the edge of the cab, and maybe we'll do that in the future. We've got the fridge here, which is wired to the secondary battery, so you can just turn it on and off through there, which is fantastic. And yeah, it's a nice little, I think it's like a 6-can fridge in there. And I can wirelessly charge my phone there. And it's also got a USB output there. I've got another one on the head unit as well. So I've got 2 USBs there, and then plus these ones up here. And I sort of said I was going to use that for charging camera gear as well. Behind the passenger seat, I've got the Red Arc 50 amp DC-DC charge controller. And that's all hooked up now, which I'm stoked about. I've also got a little fuse box for my accessories behind the passenger seat here. So I've got some spare fuses and spare points for relays as well. So I'm super stoked with that. It's mounted really nicely, tucked away, and you can barely see any of it. Behind the driver's seat, I've got a 110 amp hour BainTech battery. I've also got all of the wires running to the manifold and to the front and rear locker solenoids behind there. And then obviously I've got my compressor and tank, which aren't plumbed yet, and I've still got to do that, which are under the seat, and that's all working as I showed you before. My shifter and then my transfer case is now all wired in as well, which is fantastic. My Haltech, which definitely needs some configuring. You can see here that the air temp is reading -40, which it is in fact not -40, otherwise I would be freezing cold. So we've got to sort out all these things. I guess the Haltech's pretty cool. I was having a bit of a play with it the other day, and you can scroll through different screens, which is pretty flash. I guess one of the things that I'll look at doing is getting some actual useful inputs into here. So I do want air temp. I probably need another oil pressure sensor, and I was actually thinking maybe I'll put an oil pressure one in there. And then I'm sure you can configure all this stuff, but I need to plug a laptop in and have a bit of a play around. So I'll get to doing that. So up here I've got my spotlights, my rock lights, and my tray lights, and I've got my sub-tank, main tank switch, and I'm going to go through the fuel system in detail in a future episode, probably the next episode that you see. And I don't have any tray lights on yet. I've provisioned for them, so it's all wired up. I've literally just got to mount the lights and wire into them, so that's something that I will do by myself. My rock lights and tray lights are wired to the secondary battery, and then the spotlights are off the main battery. And we'll go through all the vehicle systems, and I'll just show you what it all looks like. I've got my phone here, and I can control these through the app, which is pretty cool. Change the color to whatever I want. I have a constant color. I'm getting some real Fast and Furious vibes here. I wish I could play the music, but again, I'd have the copyright infringement police on my case. So you can see here, I think these are a pretty cool product, and actually they're really going to benefit me off-road because I can see what's under the car, which is exactly what you want when you're wheeling. Look, a lot of people mount them under the guards, and I don't think it's a bad thing mounting them under there at all, but I was just worried about damaging them, so I've mounted them out of the way, and as a result, I can probably see a bit more under my chassis than under the wheels, which I don't know is necessarily a bad thing at all. So I think, yeah, they're going to be pretty good. We've got indicators, so that's right indicator. We've got left indicator. We've got parkers. We've got headlights. We've got high beams, and then we've got the light bar, which only works when the high beams are on. So if I turn the high beams off now, then I won't have the light bar, which is to keep it all legal. So everything lights up as I put onto parkers and headlights, which is absolutely fantastic. That's exactly what I wanted. So the fuel gauges here, the front one has 20 litres in it, so that's accurate. The rear one, there's something wrong with the sender. I've got to troubleshoot that and fix it all up. And then I've got my windscreen wiper knob there. So this is pretty much 40 style knob. Okay, so we've got my red arc dual battery gauge there. So one's connected to the primary battery and one's connected to the secondary battery, which is fantastic. And then speaking of, the head unit's just come on, so all the speakers are working now. This head unit is the cheapest one available with Apple CarPlay, and it's a full touch screen. Once you get Apple CarPlay, it's really, really difficult to go back. So I've sort of put cheaper speakers in it, but I mean, it works pretty well. So the head unit is functioning. Let's just focus on the Haltech for a second. So one of the cool things about the Haltech, and one of the reasons why I went the Haltech, is because it's got a lot of signals integrated into it, so it cleans up the dash a little bit. So you can see here I'm pulling the handbrake, which engages the park light up there, and then the indicators, I've got left, I've got right. It dims once the headlights are on, then high beam comes up as well. So I think it's a really good unit in that sense, and it's really got everything integrated and makes it all road legal. The other thing I forgot to mention is I can put additional inputs through the Haltech. So I can have a whole bunch of extra sensors, which I do want to do just to monitor my engine, and I will be doing that. It's really nice that everything just works, and I feel like, yeah, the car has a heart. It's now alive, so I've just got to do the right thing and finish it all off. So I've got these two Andersons here. Now the top one is for solar input to my second battery, and it's nicely labeled. So I've got this second one, which is just a DC outlet off the second battery. And I guess the plan is, if I'm going to be running a tray back setup, just to put a fridge up on here and I can just run an Anderson to the fridge. Or if I'm going to run a canopy, then I can run an Anderson to the canopy. So I really like the flexibility of having something like this back here. We've got my trans cooler up here, and we've got a little thermostat wired in as well. So that's going to kick in when the trans fluid is 80 degrees, which we haven't got to test yet, but I'm sure it's going to work. It's all incorporated into the main body loom, which is fantastic. So back here, we've got all my fuel pumps wired up and sender as well, and that's all incorporated into this main body loom, which is zip tied to these cable tie mounts, which I welded onto the chassis. Also got the wires running for the tail lights as well, so it's just super neat. I mean, you barely know it's there. It's sort of the same as the fuel line plumbing. So same thing again, we've got the main body loom on all the chassis rails, and that's just zip tied to those little mounts that I had up there, which I think made his job easier, but possibly not. But who knows? Back at the engine bay now, and we've even got wires running through the frame rails and that sort of stuff just to make it all cleaner. So I am just over the moon with the work done on this car. I've got to show you under the dash. So this is where the mastery has happened. It's just everything is tucked under here, and it's such a tight space. And extending the dash by 65mm, you may remember previously that I've extended by 65mm in there, and it's actually given a bit more space to work with. And even so, it's still tight under there. So I'm really glad that I've done that. And it's meant that I've been able to conceal even more wiring. So if you have a look around here, I've got my engine fuse box, I've got my body fuse box, and then literally everything else is tucked up there, and it's all functional. This under here is really, really impressive. And it's a credit to Scott who did the work on my car. I am just almost lost for words at how well concealed all this wiring is. On to the moment you've all been waiting for, so let's fire it up. Initially with this build, I wanted to get it on the road as fast as possible and then put on the accessories later. But about halfway through, I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. And I wanted to fit all the accessories before it goes off to wiring. And I'm so glad that I made that call. How often do you get a four-wheel drive with the accessories integrated into the main body loom? Normally it's some other harness that you have to run and wires everywhere. So by putting all the accessories on and wiring it all up at once, it means that I have one simple body loom and I won't have to go back to the auto electrician. So I'm really glad that I made that choice about midway through the build, and I would recommend it to anyone who's doing one of these builds from scratch. I think I owe you all an explanation as to why I got all my wiring outsourced, and I think it's really important to play to your strengths and know your limits, and wiring is definitely not one of my strong points. I've done a whole bunch of 12 volt stuff in the past, including wiring dual batteries and accessories and all that stuff. Perhaps I could have cobbled together the wiring for this car, but it wouldn't have been pretty, and I'm pretty sure I would have been just troubleshooting it all the time. And at least getting it paid and done professionally means that I have a constant for a build with so many different variables, from the engine conversion to the chassis swap to, everything that I've designed and built. There are so many different variables in the build that it's good to have at least one constant, which is the wiring. So I'm hoping that I won't have to troubleshoot that. I have done a lot of this build myself, but I have outsourced a few things, including mounting the body onto the chassis, the bodywork, painting the cab, and then now I've outsourced the wiring. I just want to say that I'm so happy with the work that I've outsourced, and it's been worth every cent. There is absolutely no way that I'm asking for any sort of discount because I'm a game-changing YouTube build. It is literally all paid work. I personally think it's a real insult asking for a discount on someone's skilled labor. So there's definitely none of that on my channel, and I hope that other big YouTube channels don't ask for discounts either, because these guys, there's a reason why they're, this is their profession. They're master craftsmen. That's the end of this episode, guys. I've got about a million little jobs to do before MotorEx, so I better get cracking. Don't forget to come down and see me at MotorEx if you're interested. And if you want to see more of the build, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Cheers.